All right, so this walkthrough is going to be a little bit on the bigger end because we're going to start talking about collisions. We're going to do a DVD logo bouncing program like this, where we have the DVD logo is able to bounce on the edges. It doesn't go off of our screen. We've already done stuff with creating objects, having them move. So what we need to do is we need to be able to randomly create it. We're going to have it change colors. And each time it hits the edge, it needs to bounce, okay? We also are going to need to take the logo, and when we're going to have to edit that so that we are looking through the logo at the rectangle that's going to be in the background. That rectangle is going to be what's actually changing color. There's a couple other ways that we could do this. We could tint an actual image that we would pull, but that is very process intensive and will actually slow down your program. So the way that I'm doing it, where we're using transparency for the DVD words, will make it so that it will run very smooth. Okay, so we'll have a little bit of a talk about collision. Then we're going to talk about creating the DVD object. Do that. We'll make the object so it bounces and changes color. And then we're going to edit the DVD image for transparency and size. And then finally, we are going to add sound. So each time we have an edge hit, we're going to add sound. So let's talk about collision. Okay. For shapes, there is mainly two different types of collisions that we can do. The easiest one is really a circle. If we have a circle hitting another circle, okay, it makes it convenient because we can look at the distance between the two. All right, if the radius, let me get some colors out. Okay. So if this is like the center of my circle and I'm drawing a straight line out here, and this is the center of my circle and I have a straight line come here. Okay, if the radius, so this would be my radius for this circle and this would be my radius for this circle, if R1 plus R2 is less than or equal to the combined distance from the center of my shape, so that would be here to here. If it's less than that distance, the straight line distance between those 2 points, then there is a collision, okay? So this is a really easy way for us to test. Sometimes when you guys are building collisions, you don't really need to have a really robust collision system. You just need to know if a collision happened between two things. So my mouse pointer could be a specific point, and I could have an object, so I could check if I'm actually clicking inside of an object and then do something. Or we could have, you know, an enemy hitting a player, okay? A lot of times all we need to do is just check, is there a collision? Other times we might need to check if there is, well, and let's, other times we might need to check if we have a collision with, say, a square, okay? So if I have a square shape and I want to know if it's hitting on the edges, like in this case the DVD logo, when it hits this edge, I want it to bounce, okay? Which would mean that I need to know what side it actually hits on. So if it hits on this edge, I want it to bounce. If it hits on this edge, I want it to bounce. If it hits on this edge, I want it to bounce. So the side would matter, okay? Which in this case is what we're going to need to do with the DVD logo. Now, it also matters depending on where we are drawing it. So if we are drawing our collisions or our shapes from the center, then we're going to have to compute what this side is by subtracting half that width if we're drawing from the center. Or we got to add half that width if we're drawing from the center. Or if we are checking specifically for, let's say we're drawing from the top left, then I just have to be able to calculate what are these edges. And then all I got to do is I got to check. So this edge, is going to be at 0 on my shape. So this would be kind of like a new origin for the shape. And then here would be the width. I'm adding the width. So if I want to get whatever this position is, then I have to add whatever this x is. Okay. So this would be x plus this width. Okay. So in this case, this is the better way that we want for our collisions, because we do need to know what side we hit so we can properly bounce it. Here with the circle, if we were going to do it with a circle, we would still create it with a hitbox of a square, because then we would know what side is hitting very easily. Okay. So that's how we're going to play around with this DVD object. Okay. So let's start creating this. Let's do let DVD, and we know that we're going to create this object. So this DVD logo is going to have a number of things in it. It's going to have an X, so we want it to just randomly start. Now here's the thing. Our DVD logo, if we're going to do some random values and we want to make sure that, and we're going to start building collisions, we need to make sure that it always stays in the boundaries of our screen. So even when it gets created randomly, it needs to stay within the boundaries of our screen. So I am going to either have to put some null values, create the size, and then create a function for the DVD to be created for the X positions based off of whatever those current sizes are. Or I got to manually calculate that out. In this case, actually the easier way would be to not calculate the X. So we're just going to do, we'll make X null, we'll make Y null. Now what is null? Null is basically a non-value. It does not exist. Okay, so it means that we are going to have to give it some value. Now my DVD logo, I'm going to make it square, so I will just have, let's say we just call it a side, and let's say our side is 50. Okay, we are going to want to, by looking at this bouncing logo, it changes colors, so that means we are going to have a color on there. So let's create a color, and we could start it off with a random color. So we need random in the red, random in the green, random in the blue. Okay. We know that we're going to have a display for our DVD. So let's write a display function. Okay, that will be a part of our DVD, and this will display, let's do a fill, and we're going to fill with this stock color, and then we're going to use a rectangle. The rectangle, let's do it from the top left. Okay, so we'll do it at this.x, this.y, this.side. Okay, and that will give us a square shape. So here is basically all that we would need for the display. Now we have to do a couple things. We're going to have to update. We want to update our X position and our Y position so that it moves back and forth. So let's just get this displayed first. And I want to just start us doing this black. We're going to change the background to black, and then we're going to do dvd.display. Let's run. Okay, there it is. I'm getting an error. Let's see what our error is. says sketch line 19. Vector is receiving number for the first parameter received an empty variable instead. Okay. It's because null doesn't exist. Okay, so we want, before we draw our display, we want to basically give some values. So let's look at, we know that we got some errors, but if I put some value in here, so let's put some values in just so we can play around. We are going to change those to null and set them up later, but I want them to actively move without errors right now. Okay, so here, instead of null, I'm going to say width divided by 2, and then here, I'm going to say height divided by 2. We're going to change this back to null later on, but we want to be able to test and have something as we're moving. Now, if we do an update where we are building another function, okay, so now this is a new one. What we want it to do is we want to add some values or some speed. So I find it best when we're trying to do this, we don't want it to just bounce in the corners, which means these two corners, which means that we need to have a different varying speed for our X and our Y. Okay, so and then if we want it to continue to move a little bit in a varying direction, we could also add to or subtract a different varying speed, so it doesn't always hit the same corners in the exact same spots, and it's just a little bit different. So we're going to do X speed, and we'll say that this is going to be random, and we're going to use some different values. So we're going to use positive and negative values, so it could potentially move to the left or the right. So let's do -2, 2, and then let's do that for Y speed. And we're going to do random, and we're going to do -2, 2. All right. So now these speeds, what we want to do in our update is we want to, this is going to be created as a value, and then we're going to add that to our X and our Y, and that's what's going to help make it move. So we can say this dot X plus equals this dot X speed, this dot Y plus equals this dot Y speed. All right. Now, if we run an update before we display, so dvd.update, now that's moving. Now, if I start this again, I should see it move in different directions all the time. We might have faster, we might have slower. So that's working. We tested up to that point. Okay, now this update, I want my display to always update before we display. So the display code is just responsible for displaying. The update code is just responsible for updating. So in here, if we, instead of calling the update down here, we could actually call it right here. We could call the update here. We could say this dot update, and this is still OK code. That means that we are going to update our code here, and then we're going to draw wherever that update is. So then I don't really need to have that here anymore, and it just makes it a little bit cleaner. Okay, now we got to make it bounce off the edges, which means we got to calculate what each one of those edges are. Okay, so we're adding these values, and we want to double check if we have an edge hit. So let's create another function inside of our DVD. So we will do another function, and we'll call it edge hit, or how about edge check? And inside of here, we want to check. So we're going to build some conditionals. So now we got to kind of find out what our left, our right, our top, and our bottom of our rectangle is. So let's get rid of this. Okay. So this is what we need to calculate. Let's do maybe a little bit less on the line width. Okay, so let's do the left side. The left side, this would be an easy way to do it. Okay. Oh, that is not bright enough. Yep, I like that better. Okay. So we want to do the left side, okay? The left side would just be here, okay? This side right here. So in order for us to do this, we need to calculate what that is. And that would be the smallest x of my shape, which would just be my x, okay? The left side is my x. All right, now let's do the right side, okay, which would be the largest x. Okay, right side would be whatever my x is for my shape plus, if it's a square, it would be the side. Otherwise, it's going to be my width of my shape. Okay, if I'm doing the top, sorry, my dog's barking a lot. That would just be my y. Okay, the bottom side would be my y plus my side, or if it's a rectangle and they're not the same, my height. Okay, now because I have a square, my width and my height are exactly the same, so I don't need to write this. I can do side, and I don't need to do this. I can do side. All right, so now that I have that, I have all of these edges. That's what I need to put in here to make it so it's really easy. So my edge check, let's do left, let's just call it L. Yeah, how about L for left? And that's just going to be this dot X. Okay, let R is going to be this dot X plus this dot side. My bottom, that'd be my top T, is this dot Y, and my bottom, so B, is going to be this dot Y plus this dot side. Okay. It makes it easy if we break this down into these pieces, because then when we write our conditionals, it's very clear what we're trying to do. Okay, now we want to check if our left edge is going to be less than our left edge of our canvas. So if our shape is coming to this left edge right here, we want it to reverse. Okay, so bounce left and right edge. Okay, now either of these, if it hits either side, the left or the right, it will bounce. Okay, so let's look at this. If I have the shape and it's moving this way, I'm moving horizontally. So if I'm moving in a negative direction horizontally and I hit the edge and I want it to go back, that means I want the horizontal direction to reverse. When I get to the right side and I hit this right edge, I want the horizontal direction to reverse. Okay, now an easy way to reverse the direction is to multiply it by -1. So either one of these cases, left or right edge, I'd need to check both of them, but if either one is true, then I want to reverse my x speed, okay? And that will be basically like my direction, okay? So my x speed, if it's positive, I'm moving to the right. If it's negative, I'm moving to the left. And how about, maybe it might be easier for us to understand if we refactor this a little bit. So let's just call it x direction. We'll replace all. And then we'll do y direction. because if we are switching directions, that means it will go the other way. So we're going to write this. If, now this is my left edge, so if L is trying to be less than or equal to the left edge of my canvas, so that would be represented as 0. Okay, remember that we talked about that on the coordinates earlier on. This would be represented as 0. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I need to make sure that it's not going to, if it caught it even one frame off, I need to make sure that I bump it back in. So I need to set my x back, so this dot x needs to be equal to 0, okay? And then I'm going to change my x direction. So that would be, actually we'll just leave this. We need to change our x direction. So that would be this dot x direction times equals -1, okay? So that means whatever, if x direction was positive times -1 would make it negative. If x direction was negative, a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, this is shorthand of writing it like this. Equals this dot x direction times -1, which is a lot to write. So we're just writing it like this, because that's the best way to do it. Okay, so if it hits the left side, I want to reverse the direction. If it hits the right side, I want to reverse the x direction. Okay, so I don't want both of them to happen at the same time. I need either one.
I didn't get that. Could you try?
Okay, so to do an OR operator, a complex conditional with an OR operator is to add 2 pipes. Okay, this will check if this one is true, it's going to fire. Or if this one is true, it's going to fire. Okay, so I want to check the right side of my shape. So if R is, in this case, greater than or equal to the right side of my canvas, which is represented as the width, like we've talked about before. So if either one of those is true, we are switching directions. Okay, so now let's look at bouncing on the top and bottom. Bounce, top and bottom edge. Okay, now we can quickly run to see where we are. That didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Well, we never called this function. So let's call this actually in the update. Right after we are changing, we will check for an edge hit. If there's an edge hit, then we're switching these values before we add them to our x and y. Okay, so as soon as there's an edge hit. So we're going to do this before we are changing these. So this dot edge check, we'll run that, which means that in my display, update's going to get called, which is going to check my edges. This is going to run. It's going to flip my x direction or y direction. Then I'm going to assign that to my x and y because I'm coming back. I finish my update, which means I'm coming back here, and then I'm filling my color, and I'm using my x and my y. Okay, so let's check the left and right. Okay, that fired on the left. We're not going to be able to see that one. Not be able to see that one. And I just want it to go to the right. Hey, okay. All right, so that was my left and right. Now I want to do my top and bottom. So I'm going to do if t is less than or equal to 0, and in this case I also want to do an OR. B is greater than or equal to the bottom of my canvas, which is represented as the height. If either one of those is true, I want to flip my y direction. So I can do times equals -1. All right, so now let's check. All right, that so far is basically us having all the collisions. Now we got to do a couple things. We know that DVD logo, we switch colors. Okay, so this would be something that if this is true, I want to switch colors. If this is true, I want to switch colors. So we have our edge collision. Let's minimize that. We want to add another function on here, and we're going to call it change color. And we're just going to say this dot color is, and then we're going to give it another random color. So random. Actually, I'm just going to copy this up here. Let's just copy up here. Paste. Finish off with a semicolon. Okay, so this is a new function to change the color. I want that to run if we have a collision. So if we collided with the left, this dot change color will run. Okay, if I have top or bottom, this dot change color will run. All right, let's check. Hey, there's our DVD logo. It's changing colors. Okay, so in terms of what we need to do, we have it bounce on the edges and change colors. We need now edit the transparency. So in terms of code, this looks very, very clean. I have one variable, which is just my DVD logo. My DVD logo is responsible for doing everything. Okay, it's going to do the edge hits. It's going to move around. If I change the size of this, everything will still work. It'll just take longer. Oh, that's a long one. So here, everything will still work. Regardless of size, because I am properly using variables. So here, much smaller size. I'm going to see it bounce more. There we go. Okay. Now, you guys could technically write, if you wanted it to do something like maybe a corner hit, you could probably write it in this edge check. You would be looking for it to have an edge hit on the left and right, left or right, and at the top and bottom at the same time. And that could be done, and then you could fire something. But let's also, let's throw in a sound effect in there, and we want that to fire whenever we have an edge hit. Okay, so we need to import a file, and I have one already. No. This is being difficult with me. Okay. I threw it on my desktop. There it is. Okay. It's the same way that we would load a image, is the same way that we would load a piece of sound. Okay. It might take longer. I don't want that big. I'm going to change this to a beep for my name. Okay, so now let's go into our references and look at how we would quickly do this. So I'm going to go into library, and there's our sound. Now this has already been implemented, but we want to make sure we preloaded, and we want to see about playing the sound. So here we have different things. We can optionally choose start time, rate, amp, cue start, duration, all of that stuff. We can have it start in a couple seconds, but we don't want this to fire all the time. So now that I have this sound, I have to fully load it in. Okay, so I got a beep.wave. So in here, let's create a sound. So beep. And then we're going to have to do a preload, and we're going to use that again. So function preload, and we'll do beep equals load sound. Let's just double check. load sound right here. Load sound. Okay, so in the preload, I'm looking at the examples. It says sound formats, MP3, OGG, my sound, load sound, and it's pointing to it. So let's read. It's called during preload. We'll be ready to play time and setup and draw. It's called outside of preload. The sound file might not be ready immediately. So it does have a callback. We're not going to even bother with that. So let's do my sound equals load sound, and then we point to it. Load sound, and we're going to do the beep. Now I got to write the exact same name. Beep dot wave. All right. So now I have it. Let's play it when we hit. So I got to think every time we have an edge hit, and it's true. So I can't put it here, because if I do beep.play, we're going to have issues. It's going to basically run all the time. I'm going to save this because it might crash it. Okay, that was running all the time because I need it to be event-based. So I don't want it to run inside of the edge. I want it to run when I am changing directions, when I am changing color. That is a hit. That's when I want it to fire. Okay, so inside of these conditionals is how I can make sure that this is being event-based. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so now that we got the sound, now we need to play with the image. Okay, I'm going to open up Photopea. Photopea is a free editing software that you guys can use. If you guys have access to Photoshop, you guys can use that too. But this one, it's free, and if you guys were developing your own games, you might want to be able to use this. Okay, so we're going to open up file. I'm attaching it in the assignment itself. This. So here is our DVD logo. Now, we got to do a couple things when we're looking at this. For one, the size, we have a little bit too much on the top and bottom. If we want it to bounce and look like it's bouncing on the words, then we got to size this down. We also need to remove some colors. So if we're doing a black background, then everywhere where I see the white, that would be what I also want to see as black, and then you're not going to see any images of your thing, because remember I mentioned that we're kind of doing a little hack on this. Then the blue part is the part that I want to actually be transparent. I want to see the color of the rectangle below it. Okay, so first we need to select. Okay, so this is Photopea. I can access, I can export, I can save stuff here. It builds by layers. I can add layers. Anything that you see above is the same as when we are drawing. I can put shapes underneath. Okay, I can use these different buttons. This is a crop tool. We are probably familiar with that because we've seen it before. But the one that I want to point to is the magic wand. There's a couple different magic wands that you can use, and you can play around with quick selection and stuff to try to further specifically select things that you want to change. The magic wand, though, works for a lot of things. Now, when I come up here, there's different things that I can choose to select for what I want to add to my selection to make changes to it. Okay, in here, I want to select all of the DVD piece right now. So I see all of this DVD and I see this, and they may not be touching each other. Okay, if I wanted to select everything that was touching each other, then I would want to make sure that I'm selecting contiguous, because that would mean that it's selecting everything of that color that is touching each other within this tolerance. If I have it not selected, anything that matches that color anywhere on this image, it will select it. So I make sure I select my layer first, and then I can select, and now we see where it kind of gave an outline. That is my selection. Okay, now I can click the delete key, and I've deleted that selection. Now it looks like, let's I'm undoing, it looks like we have a little bit of different colors right here. Okay. When we selected, it didn't select everything when I deleted. Okay, so that's not something that we're going to want to try to fix to make it better. So I'm going to deselect. In this case, I want to select, I'm going to do it the opposite. I'm going to select the white, which would be everything left over. Okay, we could bump up the tolerance if we don't like it. So I selected the white, which maybe I want to get the edges. I could click on refine edge and I could look and see what it's going to have. Okay, for refining it. So now I have the selection. We want to inverse it because for right now we want to get rid of that DVD part. So I'm going to inverse, and now I hit delete, and that is all the stuff of my DVD piece. Okay, so now this is transparent. I don't want to click off of it because I'll lose the selection, but if I put something in the background, that would show through on the DVD part and this little CD part. So now I'm going to come back here and I am going to inverse it again, and I want to, so that now I have the white selected. I can see my outline right here, so it's showing me that I got this white selection. Okay, now for layers, we could fill. We can do different things for what we want to do. We can refine the edge. We can remove background. We can do all kinds of stuff. In this case, we got a layer selected. Let's do a new fill layer, and we want to do a color, and we want it to be black. So we're going to hit OK. And now, because it just filled everything that was in that selection with black. So now I am seeing this black, and I'm seeing my transparent DVD background. Okay, now if I have any one of these on selected, so see this, now it's the white. Let us try to see if we can flatten this. So we want to export this as a PNG. Export as a PNG. Okay, now the importance is, okay, so it is showing what we want. We see those checkered parts, so it lets us know that that's transparent. The issue is, though, I got to now resize this. So let's select both of the layers to make sure that we're not messing anything up. We're going to use a crop tool, and we're going to drag down so that we're really tight with the text. I'll click down here, really tight with the bottom of that DVD. Okay, now I want to delete the cropped pixels, and then I want to click the check mark. Okay, so now here's my new size. And this is a different size than what we had. We're trying to do squares, so we're going to force this into the size of what our rectangle is. So I want to export this as a PNG, and we can call it, why don't we just call it logo.png. So I'm going to save that. And now for the image, it's the same thing as what we've done before. We need to upload this file like what we've done for other images. I need to go into my preload, and I need to put that in there and store it as a variable. In this case, I need to have another global variable. So we could have DVD image, and then put it in there. DVD image equals logo.png. Oops, I can't do it like that. Load image logo.png. Okay, so now if I run this, it should be good. If I spelled it wrong with the lowercase, I should end up getting an error. Okay, and it's going to tell me that it can't find the file because I have to make sure I'm being case sensitive. Okay, then that goes for any file. All right, so now in here, our DVD, we are still going to display our rectangle, but we're also going to be displaying this image. So image logo, DVD image. And we're going to want to do it at this.x, this.y. It's going to have to be square, this.side, and this.side. There may be times when you're trying to do images that you're going to have to modify the images. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty sweet. Okay, let's put this bigger. And so I like this, but I think this speeds on this. If it's not getting straight -2 or 2, then it's going to be moving a little bit too slow. So we're going to actually change this a little bit. We've seen it in the random that we could give it a list. So we're going to change this. Instead of it saying where it's just going to randomly select between -2 all the way up to 2, we're going to create a list, and we'll give it -2. How about -1, 1, and 2? And it will randomly select one of those. So we're not going to get a decimal close to 0. So -2, 1, 1, 2. Excuse me, that's a negative. Now let's see if that's better. Yeah, that seems like it's moving a lot better. All right, so this DVD logo, this walkthrough. Okay, again, to review, we talked about collisions and why we do different types of collisions. We chose to do collisions with the rectangle checking each side. We created the DVD object right here. We had several attributes that we were having modified. But in this one, we had a display function that is responsible for displaying, an update function that is responsible for updating the X and the Y position. We had an edge check that was responsible for checking the edges. We had a change color function that was responsible for changing the color whenever we had an edge check. We plugged all of them in. So now our DVD logo is pretty robust. It does a lot of stuff, but in terms of variables, we're still very, very simple in what we have going on right now. We only have a few variables, and 2 of them are really just assets. And then all we got is this DVD.display. Okay? Almost forgot. We actually want to change this back to null so that it doesn't create automatically in the center. We want it to create randomly anywhere, which means that before we can display, so after we create this DVD logo, we want it to give some initial position. So we'll call it init, and that will take a random position. But if we call this after the object's been created, there's already been that side. So I could say in here, this.x is going to be equal to random, but I want it to be, let's say, greater than 50, so, or greater than that side. So I could say this.side, and I actually want it to be greater than that, and I want it to be less than the width of the canvas minus this side. Okay. I also want to do that with my y, random, this dot side, comma, height, minus this dot side. Okay, so now if this is called, that needs to be called right after the DVD was created. So here, dvd.init, now those values for x and y exist, and it will start in a new place every single time. And we are sure that it's not going to have a collision with one of the edges. Yep. All right. That's it. So Work on this walkthrough, finish it up, and you have a cool DVD logo. Good luck. Have fun.